Bloody fantastic. Andy Ross back from lockdown, from not isolation. What is it? Not even quarantine. Just don't go anywhere, Andy.
Everything.
Don't do anything. You're Melbourne.
World's longest lockdown. World champions.
Nice. And you just obeyed the rules. Wouldn't expect anything less.
I did it semi-legally, but I definitely disobeyed rules for sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was lucky. Just the profession that I'm in allowed for me to be self-employed sole trader. So that falls underneath the guidelines of essential services. And I was quite lucky to have the friends that I have who live on properties and needed to employ me to work on their places. So that allowed a certain amount of freedom to go and spend time there and work, as it were. But also inside of that, I didn't necessarily want to take the piss.
Yeah. Well, that's what you said when we were talking during that first round. You're like, no, I don't want to take the piss.
Yeah, and I think that was, by the looks of it, I think that was like 7 months ago, bro. Something like that. It was the start of the first round, which was months ago. I think last episode I was on, I looked up just before, it was like 130, and that was like your episode 130. And so that was in
March.
Yeah, April. Yeah, it was the beginning of April. So I did a little like day-to-day calendar calculator in Google, and it said 7 months and 4 days, something like that. So it's been it's been long. Yeah.
And so, like, what was the mental shift of? I don't blame anyone that has a mental shift after they're like, right, we've done it. Back to normal. No, we're going back to lockdown.
It was incredible.
6 months.
It was incredible. Yeah, 6 months. Well, no, because I think it was the first or the second week of the first lockdown that we went into that we spoke, and I kind of had gotten out just before that.
Yeah.
And then the original, we're just going into 6 weeks, turned into 10, and then there was a 2-week period where we could go and do stuff, and then all of a sudden another 6 weeks turned into almost another 12 weeks. So it's been an interesting shift. But I went through a bit of a crisis when we went into stage 4, or the second stage of our lockdown. I freaked out. Like my computer, of course, everything just comes down around you all at once. My computer blew up. So not only my ability to be in the bush and do all of that stuff, including surfing and anything. I mean, we had a 5-kilometre radius from our house that we were allowed to go, and that was it. But the computer blew up the first day that was announced. And I was just like, well, that's my outlet. Like, art is my outlet. And then computer stores were oh, we don't know if we're allowed to be open or not. And so I didn't have any way of having any sort of outlet to put pen to paper, or whatever you might call it, because that's my release. Archery is my release, hunting's my release, and making artwork is as well. So yeah, I went into I lost my shit for a little while there, and I was just lucky that I've got an amazing friend who lives up the road, and he caught me coming back from a walk. I was like, I've got to get out of the house and go for a walk and try and readjust where my mind is at, because I was in panic mode of like, holy crap, I'm not going to deal with this if I can't get my computer sorted. And he just, lovely human, just was like, oh, he's an amazing guy, invented a game, and like a computer game, and now he's made himself quite wealthy from that game. So he's a technology wizard on the spectrum of being awesome. But he was like, oh, I've got a brand new computer upstairs that I haven't even touched. So we went up to his place, which is 100 meters down the road, and he was like, oh, what programs do you need? What would you like on it? Blah, blah, blah. And just uploaded all the programs that I needed to it. And then within 45 minutes, I had a brand new computer that nobody had ever used before sitting in front of me on the day that mine broke down. So that was amazing. Just support from mates. It's so unbelievable. So that was like a loaner in the time for me to kind of figure out what I needed from a Macintosh to change over to PC, and because you can just get so much more grunt out of a PC for the price point. So I had my dad, who's a legit computer nerd genius, do a whole bunch of research, and he gave me an Excel spreadsheet of every part number, all of the pricing breakdowns of like, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this. This is what an Apple costs. This is blah, blah, blah. And then, so I ended up shuffling that off to my friend up the road who'd given me the computer. And I was like, what about this option and this option? And sent that off to a couple of different people. And there was a group between my dad and two of my mates, because I don't know anything about it. I just make art. I don't know about what runs computers. And so between the three of them, they figured out what I needed, and I put an order into my dad, who ended up finding all those parts and all the bits and bobs, and he got it built and sent it down. But it took a long time to get, new screens and keyboards and everything up and running. And then, me figure out, I've been so used to dealing with Macintosh for the last 10 years. It's like learning a new language. So it's taken a fair while to kind of get back into the point where I can actually ramp up and make art again. But it's now that I've got it all up and running, it's kind of that double-edged sword of, don't really want to sit in front of a computer for hours and hours on end. So yeah.
That's what I was going to ask.
Pretty good. I feel pretty blessed though. It is that.
Yeah.
My body went into shutdown, bro. Like proper. Like I've got like a pinched sciatic nerve from sitting down so much from the first lockdown and just making art, and then I've got two bulging discs in my L4 and L5 that are pushing against that sciatic nerve, and I've got a pinched nerve in the back of my neck here that because I'd been sitting in a bad place, that had crunched my neck, and I was getting these like proper brain fogs and really intense headaches. And so I was just like, I've got to go and sort myself out, and went and had CT scans and x-rays and, physio and all that sort of stuff, and realized that I needed to spend a ridiculous amount of money on a new chair and all of those things. I made a standing table for my desk, so I wasn't sitting down. And the pinched sciatica got so bad that I couldn't even exercise. I couldn't even go for my daily walks because it would. The nerve was pinching so badly that when I would walk more than a few hundred meters, the underneath of my feet would just go numb and turn into this pain, and I couldn't actually feel my toes. I couldn't feel the bottom of my foot. So I was doing so much damage. And then, of course, I'm not allowed to go anywhere or do anything, so my only outlet is the computer. And then that was just like reaffirming all of that bad damage. And my mate who lent me the computer, Spencer from up the road, he's a research guru, and he's got the most expensive shit ever, and was like, oh, I've just done an order for these Australian-made best ergonomic chairs that you can get. And so in a week's time, he rocked up here and unleashed me this amazing beast of a chair that's so fantastic, on top of multiple physio visits and then massages. And I got one of those like a yoga swing, an inversion swing. So I put that up in the garage, and I've just been hanging from that upside down like a bat for 15 minutes a day, in little sessions. I'll do 5 minutes, and then another 5, and then another 5, and try and push it. But that alone has been the greatest help that I've had, and now I can kind of walk normally and get back into my normal routine of walking in the creeks and being in the bush. And so it was a real challenge mentally to get through all of that stuff, as well as not being allowed to go anywhere. And then when I could go somewhere, I couldn't actually do what I wanted to do because I couldn't walk. And yeah, it was a head fuck, to put it lightly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And how much do you think that was from skateboarding? Had you landed on your neck or your head or anything like that? Surely you landed on your ass a few times.
Oh yeah. Like that many broken bones, broken coccyx, broken fucking everything. And the physio or the osteo, actually, the first time, he was like, "What do you reckon?" Like, he could tell by pressing on different spots how bad that trauma is, and when that trauma is, he can tell by the amount of force that he gives and the screams that people give when he's treating them, of like the depth of that scream gives him an appreciation of how long ago that trauma has been there.
Uh-huh.
So he was like, "What do you reckon it's from?" And I was just like, "Probably 30 years of skateboarding." And he was like, "Yeah, for sure, that's exactly what it is." So yeah, he said to me, "I can't fix it, I can only manage it. And unless you get an operation on those bulging discs, there's nothing that he can really do except manage the pain." And I don't want to take that. I'm like, no way. So yeah, the yoga swing's been amazing.
Yeah, so the decompression's been helping a lot, eh?
Yeah, unbelievably so. I'm very surprised at how good it is. I had one of those inversion tables before, the ones where you
the
lie
teeters.
down and you strap your... Yeah, the teeter tables. I had one of those a few years ago, and I used it religiously for about 6 months. And then, of course, you get to the point where you right yourself and you feel better, and that just sits in your garage doing nothing. And then when you move house, you get rid of it, and then all of a sudden it all comes back. But the yoga swing, the inversion swings, actually allow you full movement, and those teeter tables, the inversion tables, just allow you to sit in a static position.
Yep.
So to be able to move and stretch and really pull that stuff out has been, I swear by it. Anyone with a bad back, just spend $50 and get one.
How would you describe the swing? Is it kind of like that acro type kind of?
Yeah, it's acro yoga. So it's got it's made out of parachute fabric.
Yeah.
It's almost like a miniature hammock.
Yeah.
Just smaller and tighter instead of being out wide. You could probably use a hammock, actually. And then it's got a bunch of different handles. Like everyone that I've like been like, "Oh, I've got one of these." They're like, "Oh, you got one of those sex swings?" And so I looked up online, and I was like, looking at these sex swings, and the yoga swings are like $50, and for exactly the same thing in a different marketplace in a different genre is like $150 to $200. And I'm like, oh, these guys are just ripping people off with exactly the same thing. So yeah, it's bloody hilarious.
A lot of
mates come around and they're like, you got your sex swing going?
A lot of money to be made in BDSM, it appears.
Yeah, absolutely.
So had you done any yoga or Pilates or anything like that lately, or it's just become a necessity now?
Oh, yeah, I hadn't done it for years. Like, I was really religious about it when I lived in Brunswick Heads there. I was, I wasn't working, so I was up at the crack of dawn and down to check the surf and, do 20 to 30 minutes of stretching before I would go surfing. And, yeah, but now I'm back on the train of waking up, doing stretching, going out, hanging upside down, checking in with myself before I, get up to do anything, and trying to be a bit more militant about not just hopping on a computer or hopping on social media straight away. Just check in, have a bit of a breather with what I want to accomplish that day. And yeah, so it's been good.
Yeah. And are you still wrapping poo pipes for buildings, or you're leaving that sit?
Yeah, I'm still on the pipes. I'm still on the... Yeah, no, well, I got kicked out of a few job sites because of stage 4 restrictions, and I only just started back up at work a few weeks ago, a rural out at Shepparton, which is 2 hours drive from Melbourne. So yeah, it's great, you know, living away from home allowance and get to write everything off on tax and really, really, really good coin. So it's kind of just kicked that financial thing back into gear. But I was worried it was going to be very full on and just be straight back into it like a maniac. But I've managed to pull one of these gigs where it's been week on, week off, week on, week off. And I think that it'll go through till about halfway through December like that. So it's been quite lovely to actually have a bit of free time now that they've opened up to actually go and do stuff legally and be, you know, available to go back into the bush and do that sort of stuff. So yeah, I feel pretty grateful for that. And a lot of my friends are just out of control busy. Work's just ramped up. Everything's open. They've had this amazing time of being locked down, which is not a holiday. And so it's been this interesting dynamic of people being allowed out, but being allowed out and just going straight back into work. So, I mean, for me, I've booked in a holiday to go to Western Australia as soon as my work finishes, and just, you know, get the hell out of Victoria and go and spend a decent amount of time over there. I was going to drive, but now South Australia's got all these magical new cases, and so the reality of me getting a permit to drive through South Australia to get to WA is a logistical nightmare. But I can fly into WA, and I can, at the moment, it's 2 weeks mandatory quarantining once I land in WA. But I can do that on a friend's property, which is great. They allow that. But if Victoria gets to 28 days of no new cases, then WA will allow me to go, or everyone to go into WA and not go into quarantine, because we've had so many days in a row of 0 cases. So there's all these logistics that come into play of how can I get out and how can I do stuff. So it just looks like at the moment I'll fly into WA and then spend a month or 6 weeks there. I don't know how long, but I'll actually drive back with a mate. So I will get to see the bits of country that I've never, you know, really spent any time in before, which I'm really looking forward to. And I've just told the boss, like, look, I'm not coming back until halfway through February. So good luck. Good luck with that.
Tablets.
Tablets, totally.
Mate, so it's like, obviously you mentioned South Australia's caught the vid, but is Victoria kind of like Australia's dirty little corner of the world at the moment, and no one wants to let you across the border? Like, the borders have been drawn.
Yeah, no one wants to know about us. Yeah, nobody. It's interesting. Because, I mean, all I've wanted to do also is go to New Zealand.
Oh, mate.
Like, ever since, 7 months ago. Like, and there's so many amazing people that, like, through Instagram now and through your connections and the people that you've had on, and I've listened to them and then they've listened to me on, on the Stag Raw, that I've got these connections across New Zealand where people are like, for sure, I'll sort you out, or if you're going to be here, I'll put you in touch with this person or that person, which has been really lovely. And I've just been hanging out, and like, there's no way that a Victorian's going to get into New Zealand in the next little while. So yeah, it's disappointing and exciting as well for, the future of when we can go and what we can do. But yeah, it's been a frustrating situation of trying to make plans and trying to get out of Victoria, and everything just sort of gets turned pear-shaped. So
do you still have
and even family stuff?
Yeah, you go.
Oh, just family stuff. Like, I haven't seen my parents all year. A lot of people are in the same boat. Like, so my mum is like, as soon as the Victorian border is open, I'm coming to see you. And I'm of the attitude of like, that's fantastic, Mum, but I've been stuck here and I want to leave. So I'm going to have to postpone seeing old mumsies for a little while, because I'm like, I'm out of here. See you later.
Where's Mum and Dad?
Yeah. They're both in Queensland.
Oh, they don't want you. They don't want anyone.
No, Queensland doesn't want anyone. That's right. Yeah.
Do you still have mates?
But even this, I mean, yeah, I've still got mates up there, and I mean, I thought I can go and do a road trip. We're allowed into New South Wales if we've got permit and all those sorts of things. It's just such a logistical head fuck, and I feel for people across the board because everybody's in the same boat.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's super bizarro land. I think that, I mean, because nobody's going overseas, like nobody's allowed to go overseas, that everywhere over the Christmas holidays is just going to be absolutely out of control with people. And Queensland's National Park said that when they opened up the national park's website for people to allow them back into the bush and to book campsites in the national park, they had 100,000 more inquiries in a day than they'd had in their entire summer last year.
Wow.
So, yeah, look out if you go into the bush. It's going to be an influx of Victorians.
Yeah. Is the high country open in Victoria again now?
Yeah, we're allowed to go into rural Victoria now, which only kind of changed last week. And the campsites, I went a couple of weeks ago down to a favourite spot in the sort of down near Wilson's Prom area, a really beautiful place, and called in. I backpacked in with a friend to a little secret beach that I've got the week before everything reopened. We had work permits to do work down there. So we decided that we'd hike into a little secret beach and spend some time well away from people. And when we went through the national park campsite, they'd closed because rural Victoria was open, but metropolitan Melbourne wasn't allowed to go into rural, but rural was allowed to go camping. But then it was 1 in every 3 campsites was open and the rest were roped off. So they haven't had the staff to be able to do the cleaning rosters on a lot of those things and keep the cleanliness or whatever the COVID health restrictions are for running those national parks. And I'm not sure if that's changed in the last week or not, or whether, so you can get on the national parks website to book and it looks like the entire thing's booked out, but it's because they've kind of closed off 2/3 of the campgrounds. And yeah, so I'm not sure if that's changed in the last week, but it was a weird thing to go and look at. And yeah.
So, sorry, what's it like in Metro now that like things are opened up? What sort of rules are in place? Like you got to mask up, or what's the vibe?
Yeah, mask up, 1.5 meters, not more than 10 people at a house. Not allowed more than 10 people in a house, and they're only allowed to be from 2 separate houses, which doesn't. Yeah, it's really weird. And then you don't have to have a mask if you're eating or drinking at a venue. You don't have to have a mask if you're in a park eating, drinking, smoking. So I went down to Edinburgh Gardens, is like this massive park in Melbourne that just is, you know, when summer hits, it's one of those parks that's just full of people. So the first weekend when that opened, there were thousands and thousands of people in there. Beautiful, beautiful spring day, and a police car at every single footpath entrance around that park that had 3 police attached to it. And those police were walking around the park non-stop, but not actually fining anybody or telling anybody off, because everybody had a drink in their hand or everybody had a cigarette or food or whatever. So it was the first time in probably 8 months that I'd seen people socializing without masks. I didn't see a single mask in the park. So it was really lovely to see that. But I think that also the mental headspace of a lot of people, me included, is you've been locked up by yourself or with your direct family members or flatmates, that it becomes an intimate, every person that you have around to your house or everywhere you go is a very intimate connection of one-on-one or 2 or 3 people. So then you put yourself into an environment where there's 5,000 people in a park that it's almost overwhelming. It's like it's just this duality of, am I ready to socialize with a bunch of people who are probably in a similar mind state, but everybody's having a good time. So it's really lovely to see that good time. But at the same time, talking to my mates, they're all like, I don't know if I'm ready for this, like I'm so content. And yeah, which is like that. And speaking of my cancer, it's, what's that? You know when hostage victims get attached to their...
Stockholm
I've
Syndrome.
gone mental blank. Stockholm Syndrome.
Yeah.
That it's not Stockholm Syndrome, but a similar thing to where people have become so used to that small, intimate thing that you just... A lot of people that I know are like, oh, I'm not ready to go out. I'm not ready to do these things. I'm comfortable going out by myself or doing stuff with a partner or whatever. That the house and the grounds and the anxieties of all those things are really real. And I noticed in myself that when I went to this little beach and had a sneaky camp, that we camped out there for 3 days, and the reality that I was able to go to the bush or go to mates' properties here and there, that was amazing for my soul and for my whole being to just be out in the bush. And but going camping for a few days on the beach, I realized that there were so many emotions that I'd pushed down, like pushed down into my being of like, well, I've got it pretty good. I don't need to go and be at the beach, or I don't need to do that because everybody else has got it way worse. Yes. So you're actually forcing down emotion into the pit of your stomach and kind of ignoring it because everybody else is in the same boat and everybody else, has it worse, or they don't have the ability to do these things. And it was a real eye-opener to go there and to sit there and to realize what sitting in the sun and looking at nature actually does and means to me. And the realization of months and months and months of forcing those ideas down is so damaging, so damaging. Yeah. So
you brought up the counsellor there. How much were you in touch with them, and did that have to be via Zoom, or you could have a clinic session?
Well, it was meant to be by Zoom.
Yeah.
But because we're mates, we were like, in person would be better, and let's have a hug.
Oh, yeah. Shit, yeah. No, I was like, it was so brief for us, but like I remember when my brother came up afterwards and we went out for dinner, and it was, you're right, it was in a restaurant and the table's there and he's sitting at the table, and it's kind of like to give your brother a hug was so bizarre and strange. And then and then I just can't even imagine how much more insular you'd be after all that time, man. Holy fuck.
Yeah. And just the weird way that people's brains work as well. Like at the park, Edinburgh Gardens, beautiful day, everyone drinking beer and, smoking a couple of joints here and there. And a few of my mates, on a little bit of cheeky psychedelics on the side or whatever it is. And then, like police walking around and them being all sus and doing illegal things. And then I'm like, I'm going home, give us a hug. And they're like, I can't hug you. We're not allowed to hug. And I'm like, you've been sitting here smoking weed in the park in front of a cop, which is totally illegal. And you've taken a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but you won't give me a hug because of what it looks like on the outside to people who are around. I'm like, come on, guys. Like, what's going on? Just fucking hug.
That's so bizarre.
So, yeah, it's just interesting, where people's mindsets are at. And I just laughed and I gave me mate the finger and he was like, I love you. And I was like, you're an idiot. And I walked away.
Mate, so when we talked the first time, you were in the process of getting that sort of post, you brought up psychedelics there, post sort of experiential reintegration system linked up with psychologists and mental skills professionals. That must have taken a big hit at the moment, but then at the same time, there's a whole bunch of research coming through from the States that's reinforcing what you guys were trying to set up.
Yeah, and I had a lot of people that put their hand up for that sort of stuff were very skeptical about the law and the maneuvering around that. Yeah. And so there's a few people that I've either been aware of in Australia or have been friends with here and there that actually got together with a bunch of people and created a very similar thing that was they had a lot more money and a lot more backing, which is super wonderful. And they're called Mind Medicine Australia. And they've actually been able to put through the legal channels of clinical trials in Australia and training facilitators in the MAPS technique. A few of those guys have actually, you know, when we were allowed to travel before that, had gone and done all that stuff. And yeah, it's just a beautiful program. They've got free webinars all the time since COVID, and they're really at the forefront of Australia. They've set up a bunch of different places for people to go and train and all of those things. So yeah, it was one of those things that the people that I knew that were directly available for me to utilize kind of pulled back a little bit because of the legalities. And so I've kind of pulled back on that as well through time constraints and COVID and a whole bunch of stuff. But it's really nice to see that group forming and the coming together of those things. And yeah, it's really lovely. I think that also my ability to not be able to delegate responsibility well to other people as well and take a whole bunch of responsibility on board for a whole bunch of different things is a challenging thing for me to learn how to do. So it's really lovely to see people who are so open about it and can talk to the government and do all those things that are really, really needed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So for you, is that quite a weight off your shoulders then?
Yeah, it is a weight off my shoulders. At the same time as me kicking myself for being like, fuck, you should have done that earlier. At the same time as being like so many, there's so many little boxes that get ticked inside of that, of like self-worth and judgment and all of those things. And I could have done this or I could have done that. But the reality of it is that like this movement, this group of people are fucking kicking goals, mate. And that's what it's all about. It's about people getting help and people who are fully trained to be able to facilitate that stuff. And you know, I tune in every now and again to their webinars, yeah, it's good information. It's just good to keep. It's what I'm into, and yeah, it's good.
So the Aussie guys are doing the webinars, the Mind Medicine people?
Yeah,
right.
Mind Medicine Australia. Yeah,
oh, that's fantastic.
And before COVID, they were doing. You know, they would hire out a movie theatre and they would play Trip of Compassion and the Paul Stamets Mushroom movies, and then they would have group panel discussion after that, so people could interact with their practitioners and ask them questions and things like that. And then, so yeah, it's quite brilliant.
No, that's amazing, because that's probably what's sort of halted Tim Ferriss's progress. With prior to COVID, he was getting like Rick Doblin, and there's another lady as well that she was one of the facilitators for the MDMA assisted psychotherapy. They had a really good discussion. I think it was a panel discussion that they recorded and released.
Yeah.
And they were talking about the realities of what you've got to try and integrate. And I think Tim Ferriss spoke about, I don't know what the organization's called, but basically he worked or volunteered as a sitter at Burning Man for people that come into the medical team. Yeah. And yeah, he was just sort of saying,
yeah, it's called the Zendo Project.
That's the one. Yeah. Yeah. And just how like you say, it's, you can see all these avenues around the world, but then you can find yourself out of your depth with your passion, and what did you say about taking too much responsibility on? And so to see, and you know, it's sometimes hard to appease to authority, but when someone with authority comes along and, like you say, can have a conversation with the government, you kind of go, yeah, that's how I wanted this to be.
yeah, it's like, thank you. Yeah. For sure. And financially, it's a big thing as well, to be able to do all that stuff and have the time to write papers and applications, and yeah, it's a huge task. So.
So you said they're linked up with MAPS. Was there some sort of plan to bring people out to Australia like that, or?
I'm not really sure. I think that they want to just be able to set up a very similar training modality for therapists.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, even in Australia, like most countries, the training a facilitator to do that stuff is such a challenging thing to legally be able to even provide a service where you're like, hey, we're going to train you to be a psychedelic integration practitioner, when it's totally illegal in the country to have, possess, take any of that stuff. So it's pretty brave to be able to do that, and it's a beautiful thing to watch it all unfold.
Is there a hub for that in Australia? Like, where do people sort of become psychotherapists in Australia?
It's not called the Phoenix. There's a bunch of different ways that you can become a psychotherapist. There's a bunch of different tertiary places that offer that as training. I'm actually seeing someone who's doing that at the moment, like is deep in school and to train to be a psychotherapist. But all that stuff is online at the moment. There's not a real hub for it, so to speak. But it's, as far as what Mind Medicine Australia are doing and offering, the fact that there's a broad spectrum between a counsellor, a transpersonal healer, a psychotherapist, a psychologist, and that spectrum of,
and then
psychiatry. Yeah, and then so there's different levels of tertiary education that allow you to be a certain person inside of that genre of stuff. And like the healthcare system in general, probably in New Zealand as well as Australia, you've got doctors, naturopaths, Chinese medicine, all of these different facilitations of healthcare providers and workers. And some of those people aren't allowed to do different things, and some of them don't get government kickback or support. Or even when you go in Australia, we've got a 10 free mental health care plan where you can go to your doctor and get signed up to get 10 free mental health care hour visits with a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but you can't get one for a transpersonal counsellor or a counsellor or a psychotherapist. They have to be registered through HICAPs. They have to be all of these different things. So the way that facilitation takes place and the spectrum of people that Mind Medicine Australia are allowing to come in to do all of that training is quite large, which is really lovely to see, So obviously different people will respond differently to different counselling modalities and methods and practitioners. So it's nice to see a really broad spectrum of that being made available.
I don't know if you caught up that we had a referendum over here on cannabis, and interestingly, New Zealand was like 60% in favour of the end of life bill, but only about 40% in favour of legalising cannabis. Did you catch up with that?
I did not know that. No.
Yeah. So
I didn't see that.
In another sort of not bizarre, but interesting take on it is Helen Clark, who used to be Prime Minister of New Zealand. She was the first elected female Prime Minister in New Zealand, and now works with maybe World Health Organization or UN or something like that. But she's very supportive of cannabis legalization. And, there's a bit of a Labour icon, and people sort of talk about the current Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, being, the second Helen Clark and things like that. But all the same, despite this landslide victory for the Labour government in New Zealand, on the flip side, we as a country aren't prepared to explore the legalities of cannabis or the benefits and address all the issues that come with it. How do you sort of feel the vibe is in Australia? Is it going to be a state level thing, or do you think as a whole country you're going to dive into it?
I really don't know. I really couldn't say. Like, for me, the extraction and the medicinal side of cannabis in Australia, it would be a great thing if it were to be opened up, but because the prices of getting CBD oil is through the roof.
How much is it in Australia? Because I think New Zealand a month supply is like $400, but then my friend was saying there's a bit of a loophole that you can bring in a month's supply, which is unspecified, to New Zealand for personal use. So, but
yeah, take a litre a day.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I don't actually know. I just know that, like, people that I associate with or am around have contacts for so-called CBD oil made here in Australia, but a lot of that has a massive THC content, and it will get you stoned. Yeah. And so there's no regulation inside of that because it's totally illegal. So then you get people who are selling a vial of it for $150, and you get people who are selling it for $250, and they're just taking the piss with people who are actually sick or actually got, medical conditions that they could utilize it for if it were legal.
Yeah, they got epilepsy and they end up getting stoned.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or like even my old partner's dad has Parkinson's.
Yeah,
it's severe Parkinson's, and like he's a doctor, he's a retired doctor, but it took probably 8 months to a year for him to get around the fact that it was illegal and there were medical benefits to it, especially for Parkinson's, and even talk to his kids about getting some. And because he's a 75, 78-year-old man, and an ex-doctor, his mindset of like, I can't do this is illegal, and what if I get caught, or what if my 40-year-old children go out and get me this stuff and they get arrested for having it, him having that live with that in his consciousness, and the help that it could give him it's absolutely crazy. And I mean, he's just been living in this world for however long he's been a doctor of, it does nothing, it's illegal, it's a dangerous thing. So yeah, I think perspective and just time probably as well, like time for people to realize the benefits of it. And
yeah. I think when it comes to that now in both countries, there is on and off label use for that. Like, I know I investigated with our compounding pharmacist in New Zealand what the vibe is. It's on label for MS patients, and even a few MS patients that I talk to, the neurologist won't give it to them, which is a bit rough, or the GP won't do it for them. But then on the flip side, the compounding pharmacist said that there's plenty of people writing off-label prescriptions. And I know of a specialist outside of MS here in Hawke's Bay that's writing it for chronic pain as well, which is one of the on-label things in Australia. I remember Greg Emerson telling us 4 or 5 on-label things you could prescribe CBD oil for, but then it's like got to be compounded, and like we say, like I think in New Zealand it's $400 for 30 days. And if anyone wants to correct me on that, I'd love to hear from them.
With an under 5% THC, with an under 5% THC content to it, and I know that. I mean, I think that probably a year ago, I don't know what the story is now, but I think a year ago there were only 2 doctors in the whole of Victoria who could actually prescribe marijuana or CBD, and then you've got where do you get it? They can write a script or whatever, and then it's like, well, I can't just go to a chemist and get it. So
I think the irony in New Zealand as well, like I think there's down the road there's a large scale hemp plantation, and I think some seed is being sent to Canada to be made in CBD oil and then sent back. But there was an
crazy environmental fucking nightmare.
Yeah, there's an IPO for a company in Christchurch a few weeks back. I don't know if they're still running or still going to be able to do the scaled up production of CBD or not without that referendum going through. But yeah, hopefully we're going to have some CBD made in New Zealand. And again, if someone can correct me on that it's already the case, I'd love to hear. Because like especially in our job, and even myself as a post-concussion person, like I've just ordered a big bunch of high potency fish oil because I'm finding again eye twitches and tripping over my words every now and again, and that's probably partly fatigue from the stupid running I'm doing. But yeah, it just keeps sneaking up on me every now and again. I'm like, far out. That was 3 years ago I got that head knock. Yeah, it's so annoying. And yeah, like at work I'll see people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just are suffering from concussion, and you're just like, I wish I could help.
Yeah, absolutely. It's painful, really. Government bureaucracy, and I suppose people's perception as well. And I mean, we're going through a period in time where, like, trying to make sense of anything, like what we've spoken about before, like the whole sense-making routine of,
yeah, man.
Are they watching the news? Are they on the internet? What side of politics are they into, which determines what news outlets they're looking at, and then what information they're having come in, and the ability for people to remove themselves to look at both sides of the fence is, being eroded all the time through social media and all of those things. So, I mean, the ability to make sense of it for a regular person of what's real and what's not in so many different cross-platform things is just thrown out the window. So, I mean, how's anyone meant to get to the bottom line of the reality of a lot of things at the moment?
Yeah, and like what you introduced me to Rebel Wisdom, and that's hours and hours of discussions of not really any answers, like awesome discussions and awesome considerations and things, but it's like encouraging you to think. It's not telling you what to think, it's encouraging you to think. And then you listen to like Lex Friedman and Brett Weinstein and Malcolm Gladwell and stuff like that, and you just go, holy cow, the world is a bit of a mess. And then New Zealand at the moment, it's like you flick on the stuff and the headlines about, the warehouse is no longer stocking Pete Evans books. You're like, for God's sake. Who gives a shit?
Wow. Well, his supplements with his face on the front of it. It's a bizarre time, isn't it?
Yeah, they're like
bizarre.
You see like even me as like a massive sports and rugby fan, I like look at it and I'm like, yeah, I really like this. But is this just a distraction? Like, is this just being funded and sponsored and stuff? Oh no, funded and put on the television to sell me beer and get me to bet and take out a loan and buy that ute?
Yeah. I think it's been quite phenomenal to sit back and watch the general public inside of COVID here. Actually a lot of people have gone down in their usage of social media and television and things like that, because they were so absorbed into it that you just get so overwhelmed with all of that stuff that you actually have to step away from it and go and do other stuff. So I think that stage 4 was really impressive for me to watch a whole bunch of my mates remove themselves from all the time Instagram feeds. They didn't have it. They weren't doing anything exciting, so that it was not like a constant barrage of all of their mates doing cool shit. So there's also well, what can you do if you're not allowed more than 5 kilometers from your own house? And so the understanding of like, I'm really literally wasting my time on this stuff. It's got nothing good to feed me back. It has been a great thing to watch inside my peer group. And even for me, this lovely lady that I've been hanging out with, and she's very proactive of leaving her phone on silent or leaving her phone on do not disturb. And, I don't have a TV in my house, and she doesn't have one at her place either. So there's a whole household there that I was lucky enough to go and hang out with. As 5-acre block, semi-backs onto the bushland, and because I was allowed to go and see an intimate partner. That was one of my escape mechanisms, was to go to her place and hang out and be able to walk straight into the bush. And so that, just having somebody to reflect my usage, who doesn't use it, and also my expectation of what response time is to messages or phone calls or social media, because it's like, you can see somebody on there, you send them a message, you see that they've seen it or whatever it is, or just sending a text message to your mate and expecting a response. And I wouldn't get a response from her for 3 days. And I'd be like, fuck, like, what's going on? But to have that as a reflection, to look at my own usage and to look at the way that my phone operates, and she would take the piss out of me because I still had my notifications on a whole bunch of different things.
Yeah.
And she was like, she'd say to me, if you just set up a timer on your phone to set your clock off every half an hour to make yourself look better, so that it makes you look like you've got heaps of mates. And I was like, fuck. Like, that's not how it is. But it removes me from that, just wanting to lock in with someone and spend time with someone and not have any of that external distraction has been such a lovely thing to be a part of, and to watch my mates pull back and watch a whole bunch of people sort of pull back with the reality of too much time on screen or too much time on social media. It's been great.
Heck yeah, man. And you're talking about not having notifications on, and another one that is still override, but putting the time limiter on your apps, and every time you're in an app, 15 minutes later it says, right, time's up, and you're like, oh shit, that's 15 minutes.
Yeah, just like that. Like that.
And it's just like,
and I was noticing that I'd get up, make my coffee, do my thing, coffee kicks in, I've got to go and take a shit. So I'd sit on the toilet, and it's like I'm sitting on the toilet at 7 o'clock in the morning, straight on Instagram, and then I could see all of my mates who were on there, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting, you're not working, but you're on Instagram at 7 o'clock in the morning. Oh, I was too.
Yeah, that's a good idea, eh? Like, how many of us are on the shitter, right? That's what I was joking with my brother yesterday. Like, he's got an Instagram, but he doesn't contribute to it. And he says he's a consumer of it, not a contributor. And I said, so what? It's just good for sitting on the shitter. He's like, yeah, pretty much.
For sure. For sure. Well, you can hear people on job sites when they're sitting on a big job site that's got 100 toilets in the toilet block or whatever. Maybe not that many, but just on it all the time. I don't know. I've backed off dramatically, which is
the music pipes up accidentally. But Morgan Penn, Trading $6 that we had on here, she had a good post the other day about stop taking your phone to the shitter, and that's exactly right, because doing the shit is very parasympathetic, and if you're on social media, you're holding your breath, you're not moving things along, you're stuffing up your poo.
For sure. And if you're sitting in a like an adrenaline situation, because social media creates those fight or flight responses, and you're locking into that thing. So you're sitting in an adrenal situation, which is probably like, when was the last time anyone was getting chased by a tiger or whatever and they want to take a shit? It's like built into our little gene pool of fight or flight response. And so it might make it harder for people to go to the toilet. Who knows?
Yeah, well, that...
I tell you what I did notice though. Like, I did notice myself feeling like these, I mean, they wouldn't be small insecurities, but they're definitely insecurities. They wouldn't be large insecurities, but they're definitely insecurities of like, I will swear again, but I've said to a couple of people now that like me doing archery and me going hunting and me going surfing and me doing all these things, I thought defined who I was. And so I called it Andy going to do sick cunt shit. So if I wasn't going to do sick cunt shit, then I wasn't maybe a sick cunt. And like, what do I have to offer inside of the relationships that I have if I'm not feeling like I'm allowed to go and do that stuff, which I thought defined me as a human and inside of my friendship groups as the guy that would always be in the bush and doing cool stuff, and I would come back and have cool stories and all of those things. So I had a real issue inside of, specifically inside of the last lockdown that we just went through, of what defines me and what do I have to offer inside of the relationships that I've got with partners or friends or you know, just best mates and all of those things. So it was a real eye-opener of like, well, I'm not posting to social media and I'm not getting responses, and then, you know, not having a computer up and running for a bit there where I could actually just produce the way that I wanted to produce and still trying to find workflows. And I had real issues with it. I was like, what have I got to offer? Like, what am I offering the world? What am I offering myself? What am I not giving myself? How come I feel insecure when I hang out with somebody and I don't have cool stories to tell, or I don't have whatever? And so just the learning to listen to myself and the reflections that I've had of a few amazing humans of like, come on, bro, like, you're a sick cunt. Doesn't matter if you're going to do sick cunt shit. It doesn't matter. Like, the ability for you to hold space or talk or offer vulnerabilities or, you know, just talk to other people. And, you know, I've been through tumultuous times, so I've got a lot to offer in that respect when it comes to friendship groups and things like that. But it was very, very challenging to come around a corner of that sort of stuff and be like, oh, wow, like, that does not define who I am. It's a part of my life and I enjoy it, but it's not the defining factor of who I am as a human. And yeah, I've got a couple of amazing friends to really thank for that, like, journey of little discovery and talking those things through and being able to be a little bit vulnerable and even voice those things was a really challenging time for me to get through a few weeks there of that sort of stuff. So
it's bloody amazing. Like, it's probably a little bit of a defense mechanism that's going on in my head. I'm with these runs at the moment, I'm getting these voices of like, what the fuck are you doing? And then also thinking about when it's over, then what the fuck are you going to do after that? And like you say, like, part of what keeps me in it is the accountability of saying I did it, paying the money to enter, all the time I've put in, but at the same time I'm getting this real loud voice like, this is so dumb. Like, what are you doing? Like, what does it matter if you don't do it? Like, those voices are coming in, and then you like look at your motivations of why you do stuff, and like you say, is my identity the actual act of doing cool stuff, or if it's just left to just me, and like you say, you're sitting there in space, you're not able to do anything, then who am I actually? And so I guess that's kind of one of the positive things of running and runners, is that you've got so much freaking time in your own head, that you have these
to think,
these long trains of thought, but at the same time it taps into a bit of what you said there. And I suppose that's, you know, that's what the monks and shit find out when, what do they say, try to find transcendence or enlightenment or whatever. Yeah, again, there's probably open-ended questions, never ending.
for sure. And the ability to talk yourself out of a certain thing because you become judge, jury and executioner in your own mind of like, oh, fuck it, or I'm not good enough, or why am I doing this? And but the reality of those struggles struggle being a key, and setting yourself a goal and promising yourself that you're going to do a certain thing. And you're only going to beat yourself up and become more judge, jury, and executioner in your own stuff if you do pull the pin on something that you've said that you're going to do. So it just creates this cyclic mental head fuckery to a degree where you're like, oh, I've got to do it. But there is a level, I suppose, for what you're doing of accountability, because you do make stuff public of what you're doing. And so then there's like a separated level of accountability that you can remove from yourself, because you've got other people that are in your direct sphere of influence that are expecting a certain thing and blah, 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 which will then in turn, once you go through your own mental headspaces and you do get to the end of that thing, to be able to pat yourself on the back. And I think that people that don't externalize or give any accountability over to, it's not giving accountability over to anybody else, but like having a group or having a community where you're doing that, or having publicly voiced that you're going to do a certain thing, makes you stand up a bit stronger and go and do that.
Yeah.
And perform, which at the end of it.
Yeah, I've been gaming that on purpose. And that's what the Circle of Savage hashtag they put up is about. It's like, this is helping me, that gamifying accountability. This is helping me do it. Like, I know when I set out to do this, I wanted to do this, but right now I'm in the worst bit of it right now, and it's freaking hard. And it's really, that's the other interesting thing is like, and Joe Rogan calls it the inner bitch. Like, it's getting real loud, eh?
For sure. Running's hard, but like it's good to see that you're doing it, and I'm proud of you for doing it, because it's like, I would look at something like that and I'd be like, no way, there's no way. So it's good. It's really good. And sometimes I like, just those positive little things of like, fucking keep hammering or get after it or whatever. And like, just, it's pretty funny, but that stuff does work and it is potent. And, like there's so many people out there that are like, get after it. So roll, blah, blah, blah. And the Gogginses and everything. And I look at those guys and I'm like, you're a fucking idiot. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm so stoked that there's people out there in the world that are just that hard up to do it. Like, it's inspiring.
Goggins' video after he came back from his injury, and he's just like, I heard all you fucking people talking about me, that I'm broken. Well, see this about here? I'm getting a 1 foot up through the other. I was just like, holy shit, this guy's lost it. And it's awesome.
Yeah, because you know what you are? You're a bunch of pussies and I've got it. Oh, it's hilarious. So good.
Mate, has your computer's like up and running now? Have you had any inspiration at the moment? Like, it must be a weird thing trying to get inspiration for your work right now. Like,
yeah, it's extremely hard. It's extremely hard, and it goes hand in hand with my artwork flow. Goes hand in hand with internal happiness a lot of the time, or even internal turmoil. But I think with my back and the issues that I've had with my back, that the reality of sitting in front of a computer for hours and hours at a time has not been very appealing, because I know that it'll just do my back in. So it's been a double-edged sword of really wanting to lock in and do stuff, but not wanting to spend the time in front of screen, not wanting to do my back in. Also, having that reflection of my friend and not having screen time at her house, and all those different things have led to a point of, I'm ebb and flow, like in and out of the tide with my art. It comes in big flows and then it goes away for a little while and then it comes back. And just not beating myself up for not producing and being okay with, in the first lockdown that we had, I produced more than 40 pieces of artwork.
Wow.
Which was like, that's a lot of art to produce. So then this second stage of lockdowns that we've been through, I've only produced maybe 2 pieces or 3 pieces max, and they're kind of rehashes of stuff that I've done before. But just to remove that internal judgment of, the artwork doesn't define me, the other things and don't define me, and it's okay to take a break from that and to sit and do other things, or to develop different stuff, or to it's also been one of the things is going from Mac to PC and upgrading all of these programs, because my Macintosh was so old that I didn't have the latest version of Photoshop. I didn't have the latest version of all of these different 3D programs and stuff. And now it's been a learning process of, because I lost everything on my Mac, the hard drive cooked itself, the whole thing cooked itself. So I didn't have access to years worth of files and palettes and brushes and textures and backgrounds and all of these things that I would utilize to make my workflow work very well and efficiently, that I had to rebuild all of those stocks of brushes, palettes, textures, all of those things. So I felt like I haven't produced as far as making something that I feel comfortable putting online, but the building of the brushes and the building of the palettes and the building of the textures and the backgrounds and all of these different things has been a process that I've been doing. So it's been a judgment in my mind of like, well, I don't have anything to show, but the building of the processes around the workflow, when the workflow comes now, I'll feel a little bit more comfortable in the speed and the way that I can get it done, because I'm not having to stop and make a certain brush and save that brush or make a certain pattern or texture. It's all been, I've been taking my time to rebuild all those stocks and rebuild all those things so that I can have a smooth flow. But the brain gets in the way, and the brain goes, you're not producing, you're not making, you're not whatever. But the reality of it is that I am, and that I have been. But because I haven't been able to show really what I've got, then it's judge, jury, and executioner again of the fuck you doing, mate?
And like externally, what's the community like? Like Jack was on pretty good flow with large scale murals, and so how's he been feeling? Have you been touching?
Jack absolutely smashed it. Jack is a fucking hero. Like, he spent lockdown, he stopped drinking, and he just, his studio got locked down. There were 5 people that got found with COVID from inside of his studio, and they ended up like changing the locks, and half the artists couldn't get their artworks out of there. They had to deep clean the whole studio. The studio is massive, one of Melbourne's biggest art studios. It's an amazing place, and one of my friends, like a few people that I know that run that place, and Jack was lucky enough to get all of his stuff out of there and all of his paints and stuff out of there, and he did a whole new series of work that is the best series that he's ever done. And I'm so like just absolutely over the moon with what he achieved mentally and physically. And you know, he's got stuff in shows in Sydney, and he's got a show somewhere else, so he's been able to maneuver around it and actually do stuff. And but now he's back doing these large scale murals for a private corporation that he's just working flat out, and he's like, I don't feel like I've had a break, you know. Like, so
yeah, I saw he posted today.
I'm
on
so
back.
stoked for him. So yeah, it's really awesome. But you know, it's been interesting to watch a whole bunch of artists in that same position, especially my graffiti mates who are, you know, just robbed of work straight away because you're not allowed to be outside and doing anything. So they're all just out of control busy now. So
yeah, they had the face masks sussed.
Yeah, they've definitely got the best face masks that you can buy, those dudes.
Yeah, looking back on your post, like early days with your big 3M mask on, shooting your bow, like what does it feel like to look back at that image?
It's fucking hilarious because it's still so relevant. It's quite interesting to. We just nobody knows what the fuck's going to happen. Who knows? Might be back to that next winter.
Oh God. Yeah, and like we might be fine over here, but yeah, like hey, if things stay as they are at the moment, like the economy, oh, no, you can't say that, but like it'll be good enough to be staying here. You know,
Yeah,
we're not really losing anything too much. it's just
for
that
sure. But you're losing a massive tourist dollar there for
yeah.
sure
Oh yeah.
from international travel.
It's
Yeah,
like the system of the world economy is really evident right now, and it's like that's why there's been so much growth everywhere. And so now it's kind of like, well, I guess we're going back to 30 years ago where it's local economy. And so
yeah,
imagine the scale of GDP in that period of time, like same with like Australia, and like a couple of mining booms in that period of time. Like how much growth has that as a country made? And then to go back to a localized economy again, it's just like, wow, like the
yeah.
cogs don't turn anymore.
No, that's right. And they'll take a little while to reboot as well because it seems like, you know, Northern Hemisphere is going back into lockdown and Southern Hemisphere is coming out, but there's still no cross-country travel allowed in between those. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's, I suppose as you've probably heard a few horror stories or situations inside of the hunting community of people who, you know, run guided hunts and things like that for international people that are probably struggling to a certain degree. And
Yeah, well, I was on a farming webinar, I think, early on, or maybe it was even in one of the farming newspapers, and they had a place in the middle of the North Island that sort of said that because hunting wasn't happening, that was 30% of their business, their farming business, straight away, just gone. And now, yesterday, I got an email from the deer industry about the venison markets with Europe going back into lockdown, and it's basically they managed to sell a whole bunch of stuff from September and October, but now they don't know what they're going to do with the produce. So they basically kind of said, talk to your meat company, and they'll sort of negotiate maybe a price or suggest that you hold on to your animals a bit longer. Thankfully, like last year was a drought, or the start of the year was a drought, but this year's been quite good. So there's plenty of grass around. Driving through the North Island, there's plenty of people cutting feed and things like that. So hopefully that continues. But
yeah,
again, like that world economy, that world, where people have gone from eating within the home to eating out in restaurants, and that restaurant trade selling, a cut for $50 instead of you going to the supermarket or growing yourself the meat. Just the scale of the economy is just so big on a global scale. And now to go back to, well, where are we gonna move all this produce to? And Hawke's Bay with that
for sure. I
apple.
mean, it's evident here.
Sorry, Hawke's
It's
Bay
evident.
apples and
Sorry to
Hawke's Bay
interrupt.
wine. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I've got a local game butcher at the markets,
Yeah.
and if I didn't have venison, like that proper game, it's not come out of a farm. They've got proper wild boar and the whole bit, and done legally, and a lot of it is cross border from New South Wales into Victoria for the pigs, and but the venison prices, the Samba prices, had gone from $25 a backstrap, $35 for quite a solid backstrap, and now they're up over $75 to $80 for a backstrap because they can't get meat, and the wild boar has disappeared off their plates, off their shelves. The crocodile and the emu from emu farms has pretty much disappeared off their shelves as well because they can't get that meat in from wherever because hunters weren't allowed to go hunting. And so also there's a couple of different things inside of our communities that are very sad. And I think I was talking to Ross from High Caliber Cleaning Products a few weeks ago, and he was saying that he's got mates who are hound hunters, and they've got 6 to 8 dogs or whatever, but however many dogs they've got, but because they're city dwellers inside a metro, they've got these dogs that they'll take out every weekend into the bush, and they would kill 5 deer between a posse of dudes, and that, that would feed the dogs.
Yeah.
And that is a cyclic thing for those guys to be able to produce meat, not only for their friends, but for their dogs. And then the dogs, so not being able to go into the bush for months and months and months at a time, and then the price of trying to feed their dogs, and then not wanting to feed them anything but venison because that's their job. And so it has a flow-on effect of people that have had to put dogs down because they can't afford to feed those dogs, which then creates a mental headspace in those hound crews of losing dogs and losing their mates and losing their partners that they're in the bush with. And so that creates a detrimental effect inside of that community of people who are unable to feed those things. They're not financially viable to do that. They're not in a mental headspace to be in the bush with their mates and with their dogs and away from, from whatever. And it creates more turmoil inside their family. But then that has a flow-on effect into our environment that nobody has really spoken about, is the fact that in Victoria, the Samba population will be out of control. Like, there's not teams of hound hunters going in there and smashing deer at a rate of 5 per team across the entirety of Victoria and New South Wales, because they're banned from doing that for such a long period of time. So there's these flow-on effects of, like, the reality of going out into the bush, into places that I've been for a while that I haven't been to for 6 months. And now when I walk back in there the other day, it's like, holy crap, the environmental damage that these deer have done over the last 6 months of nobody chasing them, and the breeding that they will have done and everything else will have an environmental impact that might go on for a long period of time, just because there haven't been people in the bush knocking these animals. And it's what's that doing down the line to everything, through everything? And that's just one little thing. Like,
yeah, and people who might look at that and go, "Oh, but deer only breed at one period of time, not Samba. Samba breed all year round."
Not Samba, they're on a cyclic rotation. Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting dynamic of, in the big Alpine National Park and inside of Wilson's Prom and inside of all of these places that didn't have tourists, they didn't have people coming through there. So when I did actually go out to just underneath the high country for a couple of weeks inside of Stage 4 to do work on a mate's property, I found that there was more roadkill of larger scale animals than usual, and there was less traffic on the road. So that kind of said to me that on the big highways like the Hume Highway, that seeing more roadkill out there, I think that the movement of animals inside of those times where there's not people moving around so much is like change the dynamic inside of that as well, of where they're going and how they're getting places, and the movements and the availability to not have people to interrupt that flow of where they want to go. So,
mate, even over here, I heard a story of a pilot. He was a 777 pilot, so he was still working but doing courier runs, and he lives in Hawke's Bay, so he was driving up to Auckland because he couldn't get a domestic flight up there anymore. And on the road between Hawke's Bay and the Central Plateau, Napier Taupo Road, he was seeing like pigs and sika on the side of the road and red deer on the side of the road. And so, like, even in the space of the 6 weeks we had level 4, that, exactly what you say, that free rangeness, that there's not humans going around there, was having an effect here. And even when I went out in start of June, I noticed a massive effect that the deer had been running around on the face right near the track, and there was partly drought, some rain, and then also deer tracks and rubbings everywhere. And I was like, man, that's pretty crazy how just like people walking through would have an effect on. Like, it's amazing. But then on the flip side, when I went in August,
absolutely, just putting scent on the ground, just
when I went in August, I found lots of what they'd usually eat. So I was like, well, yeah, that's interesting as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I found that getting up over the last little while to, either go for walks early in the morning or go to work or whatever it's been, that like Melbourne's got quite a large urban fox population.
Yeah.
And so during the, we weren't allowed more than 5 kilometres from our house, and we had a 8 p.m. curfew. So, I would get up and go to work at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I saw a bunch more foxes just getting about being brazen and cheeky in those times because there's just not people around. Yeah. So it's quite fun seeing a fox run through the city. I quite like it. I'm like, get it, tiger.
destroying people's rubbish bins, like they do in the UK.
Well, yeah, well, hopefully they're smashing some cats as well while they're at it.
Oh dear God! Yeah, is there many wildcats in Victoria?
Oh, I would say there's plenty, but they're a wily adversary. I've only seen cats when I'm driving. I've never seen a cat when I'm stalking deer or when I'm hunting rabbits or hunting foxes or anything like that. I've not seen a cat ever. They're onto it. They're bloody onto it.
Yeah. No, they're destroyers. And when you went back to the archery club, what was that like, bro? Was there anyone else there, or?
There wasn't to start with, but it's one of those things where they're only allowed 10 people, and then you have to book. And it's an interesting scenario with our archery club because it's the largest club in Victoria. We have an amazing outdoor range. It's both, a flat out to 100 meters, a whole bunch of targets, but we have a field course down the back which runs down a gully system that's donated to us through the council or through somebody, but it's massive. It's 800-900 meters long down this gully with 60 targets set up through there, and a golf course that it backs onto on one side and a fly fishing club that it backs onto on another, and where the council regulations are that we're not allowed to go down into that gully to shoot where there's nobody and it's fresh air, but the golf course is open on one side for those guys to do whatever they want, and the fly fishing is open on the other side, and they stock the pond outside of the fly fishing club. It's a public pond. They stock that with trout every year just before the school holidays. So there's 300 people, because nobody's been allowed to go out. As soon as they let everyone out, there were hundreds of people on this lake, and we're not even allowed to walk down the back and smash a couple of rabbits down on the field course. And the rabbits are out of control down there, the foxes are out of control, and we're not allowed to go down there and shoot. We're only allowed to shoot up the top, and then we're not allowed in the clubhouse. It's so bizarre, bro. It's just so bizarre. So, yeah.
That's the thing, eh? The contradiction continues.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I think Victoria is at day 19 of no new cases. So I think apparently once it hits 28 days of no new cases, then all back to normal. So only a few to go.
Good luck, mate. Well, as we said the other day, we're missing doing this, especially now you're not on social media.
Yeah, me too.
We have less chats via the messenger. But
that's right. That's right.
But this has been.
But you're out of the cupboard now. You're out of the cupboard, and you've got a nice backdrop, and you've got a plant in there, and you don't look like you've been locked away in a dungeon. It's great.
No, well, the reason for that is I think that some of the cutouts because of the cupboard. I think it was messing with the internet. So
really?
Yeah, so I decided to give it a try in the open air of my bedroom, and I think it's worked. So, yeah, goodbye to the cupboard.
Yeah, that's good. Good on you.
I'll just need to get 30 million like Joe Rogan and build a red capsule, the red pill studio.
Yeah, that's right. Take the red pill, you'll be right. Yeah, build me one too if you get that sort of money.
Sweet, man. This has been wicked, bloody good, and I'll press stop. And
yeah, always.
They want to find you, they can check out the show notes. Living Spirit Design.
Thanks, mate.
Awesome.